There are rents in the fabric of perceived reality, thin places. From these, entities sometimes emerge, wearing ill-fitting human forms. They walk among us, their eyes reflecting a void older than stars. Some call them monsters, others a reflection. This is an account of such an entity, a convergence point of pain, a walking, breathing monument to the universe's quiet cruelties. He had a name given by men, Albert Fish. But what he was transcended nomenclature. He was an appetite, a consuming shadow in the shape of a mild-mannered old man. He did not merely inflict pain, he was pain, personified and rendered curious. Born Hamilton Howard Fish in the humid political incubator of Washington, D.C., 1870, a year of nascent empires and dying faiths. His human vessel was launched from a lineage already fractured by mental disquiet. His father, a man of 75 years at his birth, a distant echo of vitality. His mother, a canvas of poverty, overwhelmed faculties, and rumored delusions, surrendered him to the sterile, echoing halls of an orphanage at the tender, porous age of 5. St. John's, a name meant for salvation, for Fish, a crucible of perversion. Within those walls, charity was a thin gruel, and discipline, a currency paid in bruises. It was there, amidst the chorus of infantile suffering and the hollow intonations of prayer, that the nascent wiring of Fish's psyche began to corrode. Beatings were administered with a chilling regularity. Humiliation was a daily sacrament. And somewhere in that bleak alchemy of suffering and scripture, a grotesque inversion occurred. Pain was not merely endured, but indexed, catalogued, and eventually sought. The raw nerve of agony became a receptor for a perverse form of ecstasy, a seed of ancient, cosmic wrongness planted in the fertile soil of a child's despair, began its silent, inexorable germination. Adulthood cloaked him in a veneer of the mundane. In 1898, he took a wife, Anna Mary Hoffman. 6 children would issue from this union, 6 small lives tethered to a man whose internal landscape was a Boschian nightmare. For even as he performed the rituals of husband and father, a parallel existence festered in the shadows. He cultivated relationships with other men, transient, anonymous couplings that scratched a different, perhaps more honest, itch. A fascination with the mechanics of mutilation began to bloom, a grotesque flower nourished by secret thoughts. His deviance was not a sudden eruption, but a slow, seeping tide. Even before the complete unraveling, his behaviors whispered of the abyss within, an unsettling interest in the humid, anonymous intimacy of public bathhouses. Letters, penned in a neat, unassuming hand, dispatched to strangers, detailing acts of startling obscenity, not as invitations, but as dispatches from a diseased interior, a compulsion to map the topography of his own burgeoning sickness. The Ledgers of Men marked his first formal transgression in 1903, a common theft. Trivial, a mere footnote. Yet, whispers from this era speak of a Thomas Barden, a name tethered to an unconfirmed confession of kidnapping and torture, a precursor perhaps, a rehearsal for the grand, horrific operas to come. The mundane mask was beginning to slip. In 1917, Anna Mary Hoffman, perhaps sensing the encroaching void, or simply weary of the unnameable wrongness that clung to him, departed. Her absence created a vacuum, and into this vacuum, Fish's aberrant piety intensified. He became increasingly, fervently religious, his lips moving with silent prayers, even as his mind teemed with hallucinations. Celestial choirs intermingled with the whispers of darker, more ancient entities. His flesh became a canvas for his tormented faith. Self-harm, not as an act of penance, but as a perverse form of worship. Needles meticulously inserted into his pelvis, a constellation of private agonies. He was a flagellant of his own obscure cult. And the children. The disappearances began to accumulate like sinister collectibles. Francis MacDonald, a name etched in the ledgers of the lost in 1924. Billy Gaffner, age 4, swallowed by the city in 1927. Fish, a phantom flitting at the periphery of these tragedies, sometimes referred to by those who glimpsed his fleeting, unsettling presence as the Grey Man, or the werewolf of Wisteria, a spectre as much as a man. The year 1928. The Budd household, a sanctuary of modest hopes. Fish, under the guise of Frank Howard, infiltrated this domestic sphere with the practiced ease of a seasoned predator. He initially feigned interest in employing their son, Edward, a charade. His gaze, ancient and cold, had already selected its true object, Grace, 10 years of age, a fragile luminescence. He spun a tale of a children's birthday party, a confection of innocence, to mask a ravenous intent. Grace, trusting, vanished with him into the labyrinth of the city. For 6 agonizing years, a silence, thick and suffocating, enveloped her fate. Then, in November 1934, the silence was broken. Not by a cry, but by the dry rattle of paper. A letter, typewritten, delivered to Grace's grieving parents. It was not a document of remorse, but a meticulously detailed chronicle of unimaginable horror. Fish, with chilling lucidity, recounted the abduction, the protracted torment, the murder, the cannibalism. He described how she resisted, how her small life was extinguished, how he had, in his own grotesque words, taken 9 days to eat her entire body. A final, perverse assurance was offered. She died a virgin. This was not a confession born of guilt. It was a monument to his depravity, a trophy displayed for a shattered family. The letter, bearing the return address of a New York private chauffeurs benevolent association, a detail Fish, in his arrogance, likely deemed untraceable, became the thread that would begin to unravel his shadowy existence. That single, damning piece of stationery, a flimsy bridge between unspeakable acts and the world of men, led detectives to a dilapidated rooming house. There, on December 13th, 1934, the Grey Man, the werewolf, the architect of so much silent terror, was apprehended. Albert Fish, then 64, appeared frail, almost pitiable, a wolf in grandfather's clothing. Once captured, the dam of his secrecy burst. He confessed to the murder of Grace Budd. He admitted to the earlier vanishing of Billy Gaffney, no longer a 4-year-old child, but an ingredient in Fish's private narrative of horror. He even called himself the Boogeyman to the authorities, a title he seemed to wear with a perverse pride. More chillingly, he revealed he had dispatched a similarly gruesome missive to Billy Gaffney's parents, another broadcast from his soul's abyss. The scope of his reign, though perhaps unknowable in its entirety, began to stain the public record. The alienists and physicians who examined him described Fish as a psychiatric phenomenon. His mind was not merely broken, it was an entirely different and terrifyingly coherent ecosystem of paraphilias, sadism and masochism inextricably intertwined. Urophilia, coprophagia, necrophilia, cannibalism. These were not mere diagnostic labels, they were the ritualistic observances of his grotesque inner world. His own body was a testament to this lifelong pilgrimage of pain. X-rays would later reveal over 24 needles embedded deep within his pelvic region, some self-inserted decades prior. He spoke of burning himself with alcohol-soaked cotton, of lashing his own back with a nail-studded paddle until the floorboards beneath him grew slick with his own effluvia. These acts were not hidden in shame. They were integral to his existence, as necessary as breath. Yet, to the unsuspecting eye, this vessel of unutterable horrors navigated the mundane world with an unnerving placidity. A house painter by trade, a father to 6 children, a man described by some as quiet, even kind, often seen with a Bible in hand. The banality of his facade was perhaps the most terrifying mask of all. For evil of this magnitude does not always announce itself with horns and sulphur. Sometimes it wears the drab costume of routine, smiles faintly, and quotes scripture before it devours. The trial was a brief, sordid pageant. His defense argued insanity, a plea underscored by his own chillingly detached accounts of auditory hallucinations, voices that commanded, voices that approved. Yet, the machinery of human justice, while acknowledging the profound derangement, deemed him fit to stand trial. The verdict was inevitable: guilty. The sentence, death by electrocution. Even madness, it seemed, had societal boundaries it could not be permitted to transgress. On January 16, 1936, Albert Fish walked with an almost serene composure to the electric chair at Sing Sing. He reportedly offered assistance to the guards as they strapped him into the grim apparatus. His final recorded words, a whisper against the hum of impending oblivion: "I don't even know why I'm here." When the switch was thrown, the execution was reportedly more violent than most. The needles, still lodged within his groin, superheated, conducting the lethal current with an unholy efficiency. Some witnesses claimed the acrid smell of burning flesh, his flesh, lingered in the execution chamber for weeks, a final olfactory testament to his horrific passage through the world. There are crimes that stain paper, ink bleeding into the fibers of history. Then there are crimes and entities like Fish that stain time itself, that hint at fissures in the very foundation of what we deem human.